Well, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. For the last several years, I have been featuring each fille du roi or king's daughter and getting to know their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them, and we've done 244. Just amazing. But before we dig into today's episode, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. The next three are ways to help the channel grow. We have Coffee, we have Patreon, and we also have on my Have Roots Will Travel website a PayPal button. All of those are ways to show your support. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, subscribers and patrons alike. Thank you so much. So let's get on and see today's episode. And now we turn our attention to episode 244, Marguerite Gaillard, dite Duplessis. Now, she is a viewer request, and she's also the great-grandmother of my best friend's daughter. And so this is for you as well. So let's get to know Marguerite and find out what her story is all about. It is quite exciting, actually. Stay tuned. She was born in 1637 in Calais, France. Her parents were Jean-Baptiste Gaillard and Catherine Lomel. She was widowed by Hercule Duperron, meaning that she was a widow when she came to New France, which meant that she could be a fille du roi. Now, the Hauts-de-France region where she is from, you can see it on the map, it's the very tip of France. And inside of that, we have the Pas-de-Calais, which is the county or département of where she comes from. There are about 67,000 people that live there now. The church that she would have been baptized from dates from the 12th century and chiefly from the 14th. It's the only church built in the English perpendicular style. When I researched this, it was kind of interesting. And why was it interesting? Because of its connection to England. Calais overlooks the Strait of Dover, the narrowest point in the English Channel, which is only about 21 miles wide, and is the closest French town to England. The White Cliffs of Dover can easily be seen on a clear day from Calais. Calais is a major port for ferries between France and England, and since 1994, the Channel Tunnel has linked nearby Coquille to Folkestone by rail. Due to its position, Calais, since the Middle Ages, has been a major port and a very important center for transport and trading with England. Calais would come under English control after Edward III of England captured the city in 1347, followed by a treaty in 1360 that formally assigned Calais to English rule. And then Calais would grow into a thriving center for wool production and came to be called the brightest jewel in the English crown, owing to its great importance as the gateway for the tin, the lead, the lace, and the wool trades. Calais remained under English control until its final capture by France in 1558. So all this is going on about less than 100 years before she was born. So that's kind of the influence of where she's coming from. I wonder if there was kind of a distaste for the English or alternatively a liking for it. I don't know. So this is kind of an interesting background. I don't think I've ever had anyone that I've done who had that connection to England. So unless they were from England. So it was very interesting to study this particular area of France. Marguerite would arrive in New France on the ship called Le Jean-Baptiste de Dieppe, and she would arrive on June 30th, 1664. She carried with her a dowry of about 200 pounds. The groom that she would select and who would select her is named François Provost, and he was born in 1637 in Saint-Aubin in Tourove. His parents were Marie Provost and Catherine Cornelou. Now, you can see by the map that it is part of the Normandy region, and inside of that, it's from the Orne département. There's a little sign, and this is a church that we've come to quite a number of times. In the 3 decades, starting in 1632, a large proportion of immigrants to New France came from exactly this area, from Perche, in what has been called the Percheron immigration movement. Many Percherons were thus recruited to work in seigneuries being established along the St. Lawrence River. And the Beauport Seigneury, New France's first agricultural-oriented seigneury, was granted in 1634. While the total number of immigrants was small, Perche had a much higher rate of immigration to New France than most other regions of the area. Nearly all French Canadians have some ancestor from the villages of Perche. Prominent last names from Perche who came to Canada starting just before the end of Samuel de Champlain's tenure include names like Côté and Boucher and Cloutier and Dion and Tremblay and Paradis. Provost was one of those as well. So let's see how he came to New France. So François would arrive in New France in 1660, presumably as an engagé with a 3-year contract to fulfill before he could either choose to stay in the New World or return home. And I would think that part of the rationale for him coming to New France was the fact that because of the area he came from, so many people had actually gone before him, and the village would talk and say, you need to go to the, La Nouvelle France. And so that's, in my mind, that's kind of why Francois would have come. What's interesting here is that Marguerite would arrive June 30th. By July 26, 1664, she's getting married to Francois. So it was definitely fast. There was no waiting around for her. And Francois obviously was, had built something that he could actually offer her. So he was ready and willing, and there she was getting off the ship. So this is how she found her second husband. Remember, she was married before. So this is her second husband, François. Now, François had gotten land at Sillery. Sillery is now one of the boroughs of Quebec City, but for well over 3 centuries, it was its own independent city. And by 2002, Sillery, along with other small cities, was amalgamated into the larger region of Quebec City. That map on the upper right tells you all of the little cities that kind of coalesced in 2002. Sillery was first established as Canada's first Indian reserve. It was named Saint Joseph, and the money for establishing the first settlement was provided by Noël Brulard de Sillery. Unfortunately, the native population fell victim to disease and other issues, and the reserve failed. The town was eventually named Sillery in honor of its benefactor and would become an important player in Quebec's lumber industry. On the upper left of your screen is a picture of Sillery's riverfront. I've included a map of where Sillery is, and you can see here on the bottom right, it's the Maison des Jésuites de Sillery, or the Jesuits' house of Sillery. On my last trip to Quebec, I did not get to see this, and it's just, eating me up alive. A fort was created here in the mid-1600s and would have been present during their time. This actual house was the one built after the fort burned down twice and dates from 1703 to 1730 for construction. Now the family would begin. We have Claude Anne, who would go on to marry Etienne Chevalier and have 5 children, 4 of whom would make it to adulthood. François Michel would marry Marie-Catherine Bonhomme and would have 8 children, 7 of whom would make it to adulthood. In the 1667 census, we do not have the 1666 one. François Marguerite is listed. We have Anne Claude, who is alive, or Claude Anne. Domestics are Jacques Damier and Pierre François, so they obviously had enough wealth, if you will, to hire people to work for them. They have 1 head of cattle, and they had 12 arpents valaires, so that's about 10 acres, 9 to 10 acres of land. In April of 1670, François died at the age of, tragic, of 32. He and Marguerite would have been married a mere 5 years and 9 months, so she is left with 2 children, her second husband, to die. As we have seen so many times before, in New France, one man dies and another arrives. Let's see who arrives for her. Now, the third groom, his name was Louis Saucy, and he was born in 1634 in Paris, France. His parents were Charles Saucy and Charlotte Clairet. Now, he would have been baptized in the Church of Saint Eustache, which is a church found in the 1st arrondissement of Paris. The present building was built between 1532 and 1632. Remember, he's born 1634, so he would have been baptized within the first couple of years of the renovation. The 2019 Easter Mass at Notre Dame in Paris was relocated to this church after the Notre Dame de Paris fire, which gives you an indication of the size of this place that it could actually accommodate. Now, being from the first arrondissement of Paris is one of the most central arrondissement of the historic heart of Paris, and includes in particular one of the oldest districts of the city, the district of Les Halles, which dates from the very beginning of the Middle Ages. So you can see on the map all of the different arrondissements, and he is born in the first arrondissement. So we know that Louis arrives in New France, and then he is in New France by 1666, because we have him on the census. So whether he arrived by, in 1663 or, that sort of thing. Remember that they signed usually 3-year contracts as engagé. So he was in the household. He's listed as a domestic servant. And that could have included anything from being a baker to a butler. I mean, we just don't know. But we know that he would have had to be free of that contract to have the right and the privilege of getting married. So we know that sometime before his marriage, he would have been able to finalize that contract and choose to stay in New France. So let's see when the marriage took place. So on the 12th of January, 1671, approximately 5 years after that first 1666 census, we know that he was free to marry, and we know that he married Marguerite Gaillard, the widow, and took on her 2 children. They continued to live at Sillery. So Louis and Marguerite would start another family. Charles would marry Marianne Bisson and have 3 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. He would then marry Marie-Madeleine Saint-Denis and have 1 more child, who would also make it to adulthood. And then he would marry Marie-Françoise Lebel and have 3 more children, all of whom would make it. So he was actually very fruitful. Jean would pass away sometime after the 1681 census. So between 1674 and 1677, we do not have a death certificate. Louis would die, leaving Marguerite the widow a 3rd time, with now 4 children to take care of. Oh my gosh, this woman, what she endures. So Marguerite would choose another husband, her 4th. Michel Le Gaillard, dit census. He was born in 1636 in Champsaur, France. His parents were Nicolas Le Gaillard and Etienne Simoneau. On the bottom left, you can see the region of France where he's from, Bourgogne-Franche-Comté, and that is the area that he's from. And then the département or county is the Côte d'Or. Now, what's interesting I just want to point out for those of you who speak French, or those of you who are learning, sans souci means without worry, which I love that last name. So if any of you have that last name in your tree, you're very lucky, because it means without worry. And then to come from a place called Champsaur, it's not spelled correctly, but it's pronounced the same as if you were lucky. So here's a man who comes from a place that is very lucky, without worries. So I love the combination of that. And so we have the church that he would have been baptized in that dates from the 15th century. And I have an older picture of it, and then the newer. And then there's a road sign just to show you how small it is. There's about 214 people that live there now. So sometime between 1674 and 77, Marguerite would marry her 4th husband, Michel. So Marguerite and Michel, let's see what they create. So they would have 3 children in all. Jean, their firstborn, would die at 22 without any descendants that we know of. Michel would marry Catherine d'Alpes, but did not have any descendants. Marie Marguerite would marry Jean-Baptiste Champagne, and would have 2 children, both of whom made it to adulthood before her early death at 22. So very tragic. So you can see that in this part of the family, the only descendancy that you might have is from Marie Marguerite. I was so fascinated by the 1681 census featuring Michel and Marguerite that I decided I wanted to explain it and give it, it's kind of a prototype of what you need to always be on the lookout for. So let's have a look at it. We'll dive in. First of all, Michel and Marguerite are listed, but Marguerite's last name is incorrect. So we need to acknowledge that for whatever reason, they gave her that last name, but it is Marguerite. Claude and Michel, Claude, and then we have Michel spelled like a feminine, in the feminine form. It's not a girl. It's Michel is a boy and Claude. And they are from Marguerite's second husband, François Provost. Now we have Marguerite, Madeleine, 12, and Marguerite. They are from his first family, Le Gaillard and Gambier. Then we have Charles and Jean-Baptiste, who are from her third marriage, Saucy and Gaillard. And we don't even have, where are Jean and Michel, the actual 2 children that they had together. We know they existed. They probably were being taken care of by another family for whatever reason. Or they just weren't counted that time. We don't know. We also want to look at what the census taker took down. He took down that they had 2 guns. They have 4 bêtes à cornes, which are 4 goats, 2 horses, and 30 alpha. It's about 25 to 28 acres of land, a significant amount. They kind of pool their resources, and this is in Sillery again. We do not have burial records or death records for either Michel or Marguerite, and we have to assume that they died based on them being present or not present at different contracts. So Michel would die sometime around the age of 50, between 1686 and 1691, and Marguerite around the ages of 52 or 56. We're pretty sure she died after Michel, and possibly 1693. Marguerite and her 3 husbands would produce 122 descendants by 1729. I'd love to find out which line you come from. I think that would be fascinating. And what a fascinating tale that we've told today. So I always like to include all of my favorite resources so that you may also be able to continue that research. We have all of the addresses listed in the notes, so if you want to look at all of these individually, they're there for you to have a look at. One of the ones that is a good place to start is La Société des Filles du Roi et Soldats du Carignan, which is a society that has existed since, we're in our 30th year. And I say we because I'm a member, and I'm also the membership chairperson. So, and I used the site long before I got involved or even joined. But now I have a couple of certificates from the various Filles du Roi that I am descendant of, which I love and I proudly put on my wall. And we also have a journal that we publish twice a year that includes lots and lots of information about les Filles du Roi. So I think that's a good place to start, definitely. You can join as a member, a full member, if you can prove your lineage, and you can write to us and we'll tell you how to do that. Or you can just become an associate, or you can just use the website. If you just use the website and don't join, there are certain places you can't go, but there's still lots of spots that you'll glean some information from. So with that being said, like I said, Wikitree, Les Filles du Roi Descendants is another excellent spot. And of course, Genealogical Quebec. That does cost quite a bit. To me, it's very, very inexpensive, but recently someone said, no, it's expensive. And I'm like, okay. I use it every single day, all the time. So for me, it's really, pennies per use. But again, it depends on what you're doing. So have a look at that as well. I swear, this story left me a little tired. I can't believe how much she endured and went forward. She really, really inspired me because I thought she kept going no matter what. and she left us with 122 descendants, and they are still going. So thank you, Marguerite, for enduring and being able to withstand the loss, the tremendous tragedy of your life, and still maintaining that onward and upward spirit. We really, really are grateful to you and admire you and are absolutely blessed that you came to our shores. So thank you, Margaret. And I also thank my patrons and supporters. You are also the wind beneath my wings. So thank you to you for always being there and supporting my efforts. I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. So until I see you on episode 245, I will say au revoir.